Jim to go, sir.
I have a question about the odor involved in the operation of this. There's an odor when it's being spread or injected. But what about the constant day-to-day? Is there anything you can do about that? You had mentioned that yes, there is an odor involved with this, but it's a tourism. We have a lot of tourism, and if you've got constant, our olfactory senses aren't quite the same as they are in Iowa, and they're much more sensitive.
Jim, could you talk more in the microphone so everybody can hear you downstairs? I appreciate that, thank you, sir.
So let me just take a shot, and then I'll turn it over to actually the odor expert. I was there last Friday. A lot of my time on dairy farms around the state of Wisconsin, and I happen to marry a dairy farmer's daughter, so she never ever says anything about that. If I stop at a swine farm, just outside, she can tell. So she's hypersensitive, just like you are. Her nose is probably bigger than yours, okay? She's not downstairs, so I can say that. But swine odor is different. Just like Trempealeau County also has a lot of poultry. Poultry odor is very different. You get into the inside of those barns, the ammonia is very different. I will say that we have 5 finishing barns within 3 miles of my house that do curtain sidewall ventilation, and you can tell on days when their pits are full, and you can tell when they're spreading. I was at your farm, and I actually stood next to the fan, and I couldn't really believe, because compared to natural ventilation, I think that the filters with the water that take that particulate out really change it. Now, are all hog farms like not the same? Not at all. So you're kind of the expert on odor. I'm more the expert on what you do with that when we were coming up.
I'm not the expert on odor. But I'll talk about what our practices are and what our understanding is. As I said last week, I'm not going to hide from the fact that livestock production has its odors. I also will not hide from the fact that if you're in a hog farm, you sort of wonder why dairy smells so much. And if you're in a dairy farm, you sort of wonder why hog farms smell so much. So, that being said, the thing that we're trying to do in this place, in particular, is adapt to new technologies, and as I said, they're being evaluated and vetted with the state of Wisconsin now, but they are technologies that have been proven to do certain things in other places in the world. And those certain things with this technology, the exhaust fanning and pulling through the air scrubbers, removes particulate matter, and that particulate matter is a big component of odor. So, I'll just say that we are working on making sure that we understand from the state how they evaluate odor, and they put in their scoring system, and we will make sure that we operate it well.
The question on the order, now that there's a standard that you have for 500, is there not 500 on the best part, or million, or whatever?
It's actually a calculated score, and I wouldn't want to put it relative to anything. I would just want to say that there's components of what your practices are, components of how many animals you have, components of how you store manure. Then there are components of distances to neighboring places, and then there's a calculation that goes through that I'd have to pull out the paper and work with the engineer to make sure I followed it with you. But there's a score that you have to achieve 500 or greater. Yeah.
Sounds like calculated class and college.
Mark?
Yeah, I had a question of Dennis. Dennis, you raised a question that we've heard from many citizens, and that is both the types of soils that we have here at the right place, as well as the weather conditions. And you said you can have the best practices, but you can have unexpected, you could have what might be considered our normal weather conditions. So given that, when you have that type of situation, how can you prepare, or what preparations have the other farms that you've worked on done if we're planning to spread the entire pit in the month of November and it rains? What would happen in a situation like that?
So that's an excellent question, and first I want you to know that you're not unique, that Bayfield County is not unique in that challenge. It's statewide, those weather conditions and that storage. Things that we normally recommend for most farms is having adequate levels of storage. And as you know, in a WPDS permit, you're supposed to have 9 months storage, greater flexibility. A lot of the dairies I work with now try to build a year in. They've also gone to different spreading windows. Like I said, in Dane County, they've really looked at those summer months. They've changed their rotations, what they're planning, so that they have more flexibility. They don't want to be sitting with taking all the manure out, let's say last November, and not touching it until next November, because then you're sunk. You know, if that pit's full, it's full. And that is a really risky situation. And I know in my discussion with this farm, it was, we need to look at different windows. When can you apply, where can you apply, and what fields can you apply? Apply smaller amounts, but get some out, so that you always have flexibility. Make sure you have more than adequate amounts of storage, and that's what's happening. You can't guarantee the weather. You can't guarantee that the summer you'll be able to apply. So, and I think that's statewide on all well-managed farms. They're really looking for opportunities to do it at a safe time with low risks. They don't want to have to spread late February, March, early, even April and May. We get a lot of rainfall and the risks are high. So how do you minimize that risk? You have different spreading windows and you have adequate storage. This farm, how many months of storage you have? 1.8 years. That's a lot of storage.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I asked them how much storage they built, that they have in the plan. It's 1.8 years of storage, which does provide quite a bit of flexibility.